In today's video, I'm talking about ThorChain. ThorChain is, to me, one of the most interesting projects in the world of crypto right now because it solves a crucial problem, and that is moving things from one blockchain to another in a manner that's both secure and decentralized. Welcome back to Dynamo DeFi. In today's video, I'll show you all the recent updates about ThorChain as well as some upcoming catalysts. As always, nothing I say is financial advice. Now, let's get into it. First, let's go through what ThorChain is and why it's different from a traditional cross-chain bridge or DEX. So it brands itself as a decentralized and autonomous cross-chain liquidity network. And basically what that means in simple terms is ThorChain allows you to swap native assets from one chain to another. So for example, you can swap Bitcoin in your Bitcoin wallet for ETH in your Ethereum wallet. And that's pretty novel, and it's novel for a few reasons. First of those reasons is that normally the way that bridges work is you wrap one asset on one chain and send it to another chain where you can then use it in DeFi. So for example, you might wrap Ethereum onto Avalanche network and then use ETH on the Avalanche network as a wrapped form of ETH. The problem is that if you look at most cross-chain hacks, the biggest ones of all time, many of them have been on bridges. So for example, RUNE, that's a bridge, Binance bridge, Wormhole, Nomad. There's just a lot of these hacks were on different bridges. And so bridges are not always secure. That of course is a major problem, but we still want to be able to use things cross-chain, and we want to be able to send value cross-chain. So what a lot of people do is they'll just send their tokens to an exchange, and then on the exchange, they swap Bitcoin to ETH, deposit Bitcoin, swap for ETH, withdraw ETH onto the Ethereum network, boom. Problem is, following the FTX collapse, a lot of people, me included, are not as comfortable using exchanges, although I still do have to use them occasionally. With ThorChain, you can remove one of the main reasons for an exchange, which is to move things cross-chain. And so this is really interesting to me and fits into some of the trends that I mentioned for 2023 in my video a couple of weeks ago, because following FTX collapse, I think that DeFi solutions will take a lot of market share from centralized solutions. And RUNE takes that very clear use case from centralized exchanges. Additionally, for me, is when I like to look at crypto projects, one of the main things that I look for is things that fill an unmet need and things that are useful. And to me, ThorChain is very useful. At the center of the ThorChain network is the RUNE token, which secures the network and derives value from activity and liquidity deposited on the ThorChain network. So if we look at it right now, it is currently rank number 82 on CoinGecko with a market cap just under $500 million. And the circulating supply is pretty decent. It's 300 million out of 500 million is already in circulation. And if you dive into it, it's roughly 8 to 9% is put into circulation every year. So that's a relatively low inflation rate as far as token unlocks and token distribution go. RUNE has very unique tokenomics that allow it to capture value from liquidity that's deposited into the ThorChain network at a leveraged rate. So basically, at a high level, for every dollar of liquidity that's deposited into the network, whether that's BTC, ETH, Dogecoin, whatever other coins people deposit into the network, the deterministic floor price of RUNE should be at a minimum 3x the total liquidity that's deposited into ThorChain. And the reason for that is that for every dollar of, say, BTC, look here on the chart, that someone deposits in, they need $1 of RUNE. So imagine someone deposited $18 million, then $18 million of RUNE would have to be purchased and deposited into the network. And that's always going to be one-to-one, as most AMM liquidity pools are. And the second reason is that to secure the network, the nodes that run the ThorChain network are incentivized to always bond at least 2x the RUNE as the non-RUNE TVL. So $18 million of BTC is deposited, $18 million of RUNE has to be paired with it by the person who deposited it, and then the nodes themselves are then incentivized in a very, very strong way to purchase twice this 18 million to then deposit themselves into the pools to bond, or not into the pools, but to bond up to secure the network. And so that's why basically as the liquidity on ThorChain increases, the price of RUNE increases as well. If you want to actually use ThorChain, and this is really interesting because this plays into the decentralization of the network as well as some other updates that we'll talk about later, there actually is no single authoritative interface. Basically, the ThorChain liquidity pools exist in the background, and then different people can build different interfaces on top of it to interact with those liquidity pools and swap. To look at ThorSwap, for example, you would have to connect your wallet to this, and you can see here that here's all the different networks that you can swap from. And if you click on a network, it shows you which of those networks have wallets that are compatible. So for example, imagine you wanted to go BTC to ETH, you might use the XDeFi wallet since that is compatible with both networks. And then you would connect your XDeFi wallet to the website, and then you'd have Bitcoin in the wallet, and then you'd swap that to ETH on Ethereum. And the fact that ThorChain can exist on the background for front-end swaps opens up a lot of unique possibilities. Specifically, it opens up the possibility of wallets integrating ThorChain into the background so that you swap coins directly within your crypto wallet without actually ever interacting with or even knowing that you're using ThorChain. And one of the things that first attracted me to ThorChain recently is Trust Wallet back in December 14th, integrated ThorChain as a cross-chain swap provider. So they have 10 million users, and they are now allowing users who swap between BTC, BNB, ETH, or BUSD, or other tokens. They will actually be using ThorChain on the background for those swaps. So users just know they are swapping BTC for ETH, and then ThorChain is running behind the scenes to make that happen. And Ledger, which is both the crypto wallet that I like to use, it's a hardware wallet, and also one of the largest wallets in the world, they tweeted out back a few weeks ago that they are working on ThorChain integrations. Stay tuned. And if Ledger were to do that, I think that would be pretty much the gold standard as far as wallets integrating ThorChain. Another interesting thing about ThorChain recently is that 2 months ago in November, they launched Savers vaults, which allow you to deposit layer 1 assets single-sided. So for example, you deposit BTC and earn yield on that BTC without exposure to any other tokens. And this actually goes after another major use case of these centralized platforms. Remember Celsius, for example, remember BlockFi allowed people to deposit assets single-sided and earn yield. Well, ThorChain is allowing you to do that in a decentralized manner now, so it doesn't have the same risks that something like Celsius and BlockFi had. It does have some risks that we'll talk about later, but right now you can deposit BTC, ETH, BNB, Doge, Atom, AVAX, and more. And let's look at the yields. If we look over on thorswap.finance, for example, you can earn 4.24% on BTC. And remember, normally there's not a way to earn yield on BTC, right? Same thing with Doge, which has 8.7% APR. Same thing with Litecoin, which has 9.17% APR. And if we look at this chart over on this website known as ThorCharts, then you can see that since this launched in November, which is honestly the worst possible time for something to launch because of the FTX collapse, it's grown substantially to a point where there's now $14 million of funds deposited into these Savers vaults. Now let's talk about some upcoming catalysts that could take ThorChain to the next level. First of these is something known as ThorFi that's being developed soon. This will allow you to deposit one asset as collateral, say BTC, and then borrow another blue chip asset like ETH from the protocol. So that's pretty cool because it will increase liquidity on the network and also add another source of utility for the ThorChain ecosystem. Two other things that are coming up is a Binance Smart Chain integration. So right now they have integrated a different BNB chain. There was actually a Binance chain before Binance Smart Chain, and that's what they have integrated. This is going to be Binance Smart Chain, which has many, many more users. And then XHV or Haven, which is not as well known, but basically it's a privacy chain that is similar to Monero in terms of privacy, but also has a stablecoin on it. Let's talk about the risks of ThorChain now. First of these is security. Whenever you're offered yield, especially single-sided yield, there always has to be some sort of risk because yield is basically you getting paid for the risk. Back in 2021, ThorChain was the subject of 2 exploits in a short period of time. And although these particular issues have been resolved now, it is always a concern that there could be another exploit for some other reason that potentially the team missed. Another risk that I see is that To make the single-sided yield work in Savers vaults, it involves swapping the coin you deposit for RUNE and then minting an equal amount of synthetic assets for the coin that you deposited. And although they have a limit on how many synthetic assets can be minted to ensure that people will always be able to withdraw the assets they deposited, when I hear things like that, synthetic assets, I do get concerned about how it might perform during a major market crash. Maybe after hearing all of this, you are interested in investing in RUNE for yourself. Well, the best way to do that is to do it directly through a crypto wallet. There is a wallet XDeFi that you can buy and hold RUNE in. And although there's different interfaces, I typically like to use ThorSwap. That's thorswap.finance. And as we looked at before, you can swap any of these other assets like ETH, like BTC, like Litecoin for RUNE in your XDeFi wallet on ThorSwap. But perhaps some of you are not comfortable using a wallet, or you don't want to create a new wallet. You can also purchase RUNE on a centralized exchange. Personally, my exchange of choice for these sorts of things is KuCoin. Link in the description to get a discount on fees and also support this channel. Let me know down in the comments what you think about ThorChain. And if you want more content like this, be sure to like this video and subscribe. Until next time, this is Dynamo DeFi.